Good afternoon. I'm Richard Seabass, the Dean of Engineering, University of Colorado Boulder. I am pleased to welcome you to the fifth in our series of lectures on technology and responsibility, a lecture series that is sponsored by the Herbst Endowment for Humanities and Engineering, as well as the President's Fund for Humanities. In the series in the past, we began by looking at professional education and the examined life, from which we learned that if you examine your life, at least if you examine your life by reading the great books, it would be better in terms of judging what was a responsible behavior. I then heard about engineering education and managerial responsibility, where two people pointed out the importance of bringing to bear on what we do with the quality process, something that I have to confess is yet to intrude upon education, especially on higher education. We had a spirited debate on the ethics of arm manufacture, a debate that I unfortunately missed, and then a very nice set of talks on technology and environmental responsibility. Today's subject is professional ethics in engineering. It's something we do far too little of in our educational programs, and I look forward very much to hearing what our guests today will say. Your host for this series is Athanasios Moulakis, the Herbst Professor of Humanities for Engineers, and I'd like now to turn this over to Thanasi. Thanasi?
Good afternoon. It is a great pleasure to be back with you again in this attempt to go beyond the narrowness of a technical education, taking advantage of the possibilities afforded and the stimulation provided by the Herbst Program of Humanities. You've heard the name Herbst a couple of times already. It is a particular pleasure today to have the person here who made it all possible, namely Clancy Herbst himself, so that he contributes, as it were, twice to this program, or doubly, indirectly. I don't know which one is more direct, himself or his money. But what we do appreciate is his constant concern and his goodwill towards us. I'm really delighted to have here an alumnus of this college, chemical engineer in 1960, who went on to the University of Chicago to get his MBA. He has been involved in industry, not only in the United States, but also abroad. And he is here with us to speak from his experience on engineering ethics. He is, I must say, very active in all the affairs of the university. He is one of the leading figures of the Colorado Foundation, Colorado University Foundation, and he is indeed the recipient of the Colorado University of Colorado Medal. This is the last of many honors that have been heaped on him. Next to him, we have another alumnus of our college, whom we're very proud to have with us, namely Dr. Albert Knott, who took his Bachelor of Science in Architectural Engineering in 1955. He went on to Berkeley to get his MS, and then on to Stanford for his PhD. He has taught in a number of places, including two of his alma mater, namely Stanford and CU. He is an independent engineer. He is, in other words, one of these rare, truly rare figures of people who can actually go out and make it on their own, and whose specialty, among other things, has been failure analysis. And since we are all liable to failure, we're delighted to have somebody who can help us out. This has led him to what one might call forensic engineering, and it is self-evident that forensic engineering is one of the most formally linked things to concerns of professional ethics. I am delighted to introduce our first speaker, in this case, Clancy Herbst.
Good afternoon. The talk today is supposed to be about professional ethics in engineering, and how I was selected to perform at this podium, I haven't got the slightest idea. So I started off by looking in the dictionary for the definition of several of the words in the title. I found a definition of engineering that satisfied me and was simple enough for my mind, and that is the work performed by engineers. That goes everywhere from changing diapers up to building bridges, I would assume. And for the purpose of my talk, will fit that whole category. Ethics, that's the rules of standards governing the right and good conduct of the members of a profession. So the good and right conduct of engineers is what I plan to make a few comments about today. Now, my approach is that you and I probably spend too much of our time in the technical side of engineering, at least until we go out and get a job. This limits our experiences, our knowledge, and puts us at a great disadvantage when problems come up other than technical problems. I need your involvement to make this afternoon a little bit of fun. I would like to have each one of you take out a piece of paper and a pencil, a card of some kind, and make 3 columns. The first column on your left, title that Problems. And then I'm going to give you 2 potential solutions to those problems. And I'd like to have you choose a solution, the one that you think is right. Now, what I'm going to do is present you with real problems from life that you will be facing as you progress through your business career. These problems will be dumped on your desk, literally, as you progress through business and hopefully rise to the top. Someday you might even be president of a company and have to make decisions right away on a set of facts that are given to you. So in this little experiment this afternoon, consider yourself the president of a company. Somebody walks in and dumps a problem on you, and you're asked to make a choice. There'll be a fast pace here this afternoon because our time is limited. There won't be any discussion period during the formal part of this presentation. I'll try not to editorialize, and there really are no specific answers to these problems. All right, the first one. Remember, you're the president of the company, and this is what's happened to you. You use asbestos or some other carcinogen in the manufacturing of your product. So this problem can be defined asbestos. You know, now remember this is important, you know and believe that the health risks are greatly exaggerated, that the health risks are controllable. The product is very useful technically. It's economical when you compare it to substitutes that you might have to use. Your foreign competition uses it and ships product into this country with asbestos in it. OSHA's tests for asbestos are absolutely ridiculous and unworkable. The alternatives to asbestos are dangerous also. You believe that smoking is much more dangerous in your workplace than the asbestos you use, and the Canadian asbestos miners and workers have a known health risk level exactly like the rest of the Canadian population, even in the Yukon. So, here are your 2 choices with those known facts. Choice number 1, continue using asbestos, stay competitive, dispute the media, take them on tooth and nail, and fight OSHA tooth and nail. That's one choice. Your other choice is to abandon asbestos, pay the short-term costs of doing so, reduce your profits, and put out of work the asbestos workers and companies that have been supplying you for years. Those are your 2 choices. Which one are you going to do? Choice 1 or choice 2? My comments on choice 1 is that by following choice 1, you'll feel good initially, you will lose eventually, lawsuits will follow, you and your company will both go bankrupt, and your wife and children will become upset. That's the first problem. That's an easy one. Second problem, completely different situation. You have lots of smoking in your factory or the use of drugs or alcohol. But start off with smoking. You know and believe that smoking is dangerous to people's health, that secondary smoke is dangerous, that the health costs are going up at 3 times at the inflation rate, and you personally now are a non-smoker. Now you have 2 choices what to do in the workplace. Choice number 1, stop hiring smokers. Put in a smoke enders program. Put in a wellness program. Don't allow any smoking anywhere on your property. Give a medical exam to all of your employees. Offer a reward for those people that quit smoking. Now remember, you're stepping on some people's toes as far as freedom of choice, so what is ethical, but you're going to save money long term. Now that might not be ethical, but you're going to do that, you hope. Choice number 2, ignore the problem completely and go on with your work. That's the problem and your 2 choices. Did you pick 1? Did you pick 2? Comments about choice number 1. You're going to have a group of very mad employees. You are going to spend lots of money on your medical costs with a wellness program trying to improve your employees' health, and you probably will miss hiring some good person that you might want who happens to admit that he's a smoker, and that might even be your brother-in-law. That's the second problem. Problem number 3. A customer of yours, a good customer, has a problem in his product or process. The problem is real and a large problem. You or one of your employees know the solution. However, the president of the other company was the man that invented the product that's going to crash. And he doesn't like people stepping on his toes. You have 2 choices. Choice number 1 again. Tell the customer diplomatically that a problem is coming and gain or lose depending on that man's personal problems, let's say. Choice number 2, stay silent, prepare for the crash, and exploit it to the best of your advantages. That's the problem, customer problem, and your 2 choices. My comment about number 1 again is, are you lucky enough personally to be able to accept somebody else's ideas when they step on yours? Next problem is in the pricing of your product. Remember, you're the president of a company. In this case, you're a job shop making things to somebody else's specifications. A big job comes along that you have the opportunity of quoting on. You do an estimate on the job. You gather all the costs and do a proper job of that. You review the design and the manufacturing process. You know that your company can do a good job making this product. You know that you can do a good job on the quality and that your costs will be in line with your competition. Those are knowns. Here are your 2 choices. The first choice is to take all that information, add a specific amount of money to your costs that will give you a satisfactory return on your investment producing this job. That's your first choice. Your second choice is to take those same costs and rather than adding something for your profit, take something off purposely, knowing full well that you cannot make the product for that price, quote a low price, get the job, run the job, and then determine your actual cost, because a guess is worth two finesses. Right? That's not the way it's supposed to go, but anyway, then when you finally do know your prices, raise your price to the customer to where it's supposed to be, where it should have been originally. And let the customer decide now, after all of this work, whether he wants to pull the job out of your factory. In nasty terms, this is called bait and switch. That's not used in industry, obviously, but quoting low is done two ways, on purpose and by accident, and both tend to bring you in work. Comments about number one, choice number one. That's the quote the proper price. In today's world, I don't think you will get a single job. Again, your wife and children will get mad, and the question, you'd like your customers to trust you. You've been doing a good job for them. They should be willing to take your figures and possibly give the job to you or another company that's been doing a good job. The trouble is that if they trust you too much, might you put your hand a little deeper in that person's pocket? It gets to be a little tough. I know one company whose trade, or the way they handle their business, if they wanted to manufacture a book and sell it, or a part and sell it, they would quote, and still do, a tooling price maybe 5 to 10 times normal, and a piece price half of normal, and the company that was buying would think that they were doing such a marvelous job of engineering on manufacturing processes that they would get awarded the job, because the company buying would make the money back by buying 100 million parts cheap. The company pockets the tool money, bills the tool for 1/10 of what the charge was, turns around and switches the price back up to normal, and goes along their fat, dumb, and sassy way. And it has built quite a company, even doing that several times to the same customer. Anyway, I'm digressing. Next problem. This one's called union. You made the mistake of buying a company that was unionized. It is now contract time. This company is it's organized by the United Steelworkers, and this factory happens to be in northern Indiana, which is steelworker country. You treat your employees properly in all of your factories. You have won 6 union elections when unions tried to organize your factory. You are not earning much money. You cannot raise prices, and there is high local unemployment in northern Indiana. Your choices: number one, talk to your employees often, treat them well, and build up a rapport. Reason with the union, bargain in good faith, and settle peacefully, and go on manufacturing. Choice number 2 is to do one or more of these things. Sign a sweetheart contract quickly with another union. Threaten, buy off, or fire some of your adversaries diplomatically now, otherwise you're going to get in trouble with the NLRB, but you can do these things. Pad your payroll with friendlies. Move the work out of the shop and fire some of your workers, which is a way of threatening them, obviously, and then out and out close the factory, move the work elsewhere. Which of those two choices are you going to make? My comment about choice number one again is good luck. I hope you're more persuasive than some of the people up here in the front, and also quite rich. Problem number 6. Nasty situations. Some of you young people, I hope, realize that these things do happen and go on. And I'm presenting to you real cases, so have fun with them in your lifetime. These are nasty situations. One of your customer's employees wants a bribe, a new car, set of tires, whatever. He just, I'll buy your product, but I want. One other nasty situation is one of your major competitors invites you to dinner and says, how about setting prices and doing a price-fixing scheme? That in this country can get very exciting. But for people in other walks of life, in other worlds, that's quite normal. What if your competitor lies to your customer? Just out and out lies. These are knowns. Your customer, a very reputable company, asks you to masquerade as one of their engineers in order to find out some information from one of your competitors. Another one is one of your competitors is paying off your customer in a big way, and you know it. Another one is a supplier wants to bribe you to spec his material. Those are all nasties. Now here are your choices in any one of these things. Choice number 1 again, don't participate in any of these nasties. But also don't snitch. Don't be a stool pigeon. And try and convert the world to your American ethical way of doing business. Choice number 2 is also don't participate, but snitch if you think it is right to do so. I won't make any comments about those. Next problem, lawsuits. You have many lawsuits against your company. Many, many, many. Age discrimination, sex discrimination, religious discrimination, workman's compensation problems. I've got them all. You believe that you are innocent of all charges. You have good but expensive legal counsel. You have either deep or shallow pockets. You can take your choice. It's more fun with deep ones, but on this problem, you can take your choice. Now your 2 choices. You have all these lawsuits. Choice number 1 is fight tooth and nail because you are innocent. Never, never, ever settle. Don't give up. Choice number 2, settle and minimize costs. Those are your 2 choices. Comment number 1, lawyers will get rich by reallocating the assets of the country from one person to another. You will lose all of your vacation time, both summer and winter, fighting cases. You will many times, in fact most times, prove your adversary right. Prove that it's worthwhile suing somebody frivolously. You will waste time, and your business will suffer or die. Comment about number 2, perpetuating by settling, you are perpetuating what I consider a bad system. Is that ethical? You will feel awful every time you settle. Just feel awful. Not about giving up the money. You'll just feel awful. And you will eventually pass the cost on to the consumer anyway. One more. I think I've got time for one more. One more? Okay. This one might get a little controversial. It's called sex discrimination. You are hiring in your factory. You have both women and men doing a specific job in the factory now. 100 of each. Balanced, let's say. Lots of them. The wage, pick a wage, $12 an hour in today's world. And you know there are qualified women and men for this job. But you also know that there is sex discrimination in the workplace, and that women, I'll be careful here, women really somehow get paid less. They seem to be happier at $12 an hour than a man at $12 an hour in the same job with the same education. I'm going to catch it tonight on this one, I think. But what I'm trying to get at is that a man in a job, 100 men with 100 women in the same job, the man wants a better job. Somehow his ego is hurt. How about that? I believe this, and pardon me, you're supposed to believe this because this is a situation. Now, here are your two choices. Hire both sexes and switch the wage system to a pay by merit only rather than a capped $12 an hour for this specific job. Choice number 2 is hire only women when possible, but don't tell anybody why, because you are really getting, or your experience tells you that you're getting a better overall employee at $12 an hour if she's female than male. I think we should move on. Now look at your list, please. How many, I'm not asking for answers, but really look at how many number 1s you chose versus how many number 2s. Did these problems come too rapidly for you? Just wait a few years until you're the president of a company. If you have too many number 1s, might I suggest being a preacher rather than going into business? You are dealing in a world economy. Each country is different. Each economic zone has different rules and ethics and moral values. And this creates a big problem for American industry. Now, I'm going to refer just a minute because I would like to have you think about these problems again tonight or some other time, but in a little different context. I'm going to use Mortimer Adler and Aristotle, their definition of moral virtue and ethical conduct. The definition is desiring and doing the right thing, but for the right reason. Did you make your decision to go to 1 or 2 for the right reason? If it was the wrong reason, you don't get any points. It is not simply doing good to and for others, and it is not acting righteously and meeting your social obligation that gets you points, according to Aristotle. And that brings us to where we are, or where I started, by going to the library and buying this book. I suggest you do too. There's lots of them in the Colorado Library. And I also suggest you read Mortimer Adler's new book, Desires, Right and Wrong, The Ethics of Enough. I plan to send a copy to Mr. Keating and Milliken and a few more of those gentlemen and see whether they have enough. And this whole tirade on ethics in problems other than the technical part of engineering is meant to be a plug for the Humanities for Engineering program. I wish it were there when I went to school, and maybe I had done better in some of these problems. Thank you.
I enjoyed that. Why do I have to stand up here? I would rather you continue. My background is in failure analysis and forensic engineering, and I'm quite often asked to go into court and present the results of an analysis. Basically, why did the building fail? Why did the machine fail? My company does a lot of building collapses, building failures, and we also do a lot of vehicular accident reconstruction. And I want to give you some examples of some of the things that we run across and some of the questions that come up. A client asked us to look into a vehicular accident reconstruction. This was an attorney. The attorney's client was an elderly gentleman, 75 years old, just as nice as the day is long, and drove into an intersection and turned left. And there was an oncoming car and an ensuing wreck. In the process of doing the analysis, we found that the oncoming car was speeding. So the attorney asked us to tell the truth, answer the following question. Had the oncoming car not been speeding, would my client have cleared the intersection and there would have been no accident? And the answer is yes, that's true. At the point where the left-turning person could see the oncoming car, if you choose that as the starting point for your analysis, and that car had not been speeding, this fellow could have turned left and cleared the intersection. And I suggested that also, if you can say that had this man not turned left, then there would not have been an accident. He would have stopped, the speeding car would have passed on through, and therefore the cause of the accident was the left turn. My attorney suggested that I might want to get paid. He's not paying me for answering 2 questions, he's paying me for answering 1. What do you do? What do you write in your report? From a practical standpoint, you do have to reach decisions. In this particular one, I said, I will write the answer to that 1 question, and if the other attorney has enough sense to ask me the opposing question, I will not only answer that, but discuss why I was asked to limit my review in the first place. And they settled out of court. So you do run across these. I define ethics as for the greater good. That's a simplified version of the many definitions that you run across. And that, to me, is realistic from where I'm coming right now. We all learned our ethics when we were kids. Our mothers spanked us regularly. We weren't allowed to beat on our younger brothers. We weren't allowed to lie. We got whipped when we were lying. But at the same time, my dad drove faster than the speed limit. This didn't happen to me, but it happened to a buddy of mine. His folks took him to a movie when he was 12 and told the folks at the movie house that in fact he was 11 and therefore he could get in at the lower price. So those parents gave their boy a lesson in ethics. I have a case back east in which the floor tile is coming up from a floor. And this is in a large mall. And in terms of size, if you had a corridor 15 feet wide, it would be 3 miles long. There's that much tile coming up. The insurance policy says we do not reimburse you for negligence, but we will reimburse you for the consequences of negligence. For example, if a pipe breaks in your basement, the insurance company will not come out and fix the pipe, but they will replace the rug that was ruined. The pipe is the cause, and your argument is with the contractor who did a poor job of installing that pipe. But they will pay for the consequences of the contractor's negligence. Well, here are a series of truthful statements about the tile on the mall. The tile was laid negligently. The conclusion you would reach is that the insurance company doesn't pay for the replacement. The second one is the concrete was placed negligently. And therefore, to correct the concrete, you have to remove this lovely tile. So the removal and replacement of the tile, which is $4 million, by the way, is a consequence of the improper construction of the concrete under it. On the other hand, you can say, well, with that one, you would conclude that the insurance company would pay for the tile. You can say that the concrete was so bad that had the tile been perfect, it would have still had to have been removed and replaced. Therefore, the insurance company should pay. Those statements are true. All of them are true, and they make a $4 million swing in the answer back and forth. What should I put in my report? What should I say? Fact of the matter is, we are all asked to answer only the questions. We can only answer the question asked. So an attorney that asks the right question gets the answer he may want. An attorney that asks the wrong question may discover he's got a snake by the tail. But anyway, we're told to go into court and to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, if they ask the correct question. It's the best system in town. The alternative is what Hitler tried. But there are shortcomings in this. And there's also a tendency among juries to give away the store because some innocent party was hurt, and obviously the fat cat can pay for it, whether or not it's his fault. There seems to be a tendency, for example, to collect on insurance when you can. I paid the premium, you owe it. There was a hailstorm in Denver about, well, July last year. Tore the roof off the building that I had. Beat the roof to pieces. It was a shingle roof. Really marked it up. We took photographs of it. It was a nice job. On the other hand, I was in the process of building a new laboratory right next door to it. I was going to move into the new laboratory in 1 week, and the roof didn't leak. We called up the insurance company and said, our cars have been beaten up. We need to have some insurance repair on the cars, some insurance claims. So we did. The insurance company came out, looked at all the cars, and wrote it all up, gave us a check. I did not ask for the roof to be replaced because I wasn't going to need it for more than a week. But here came a check for $2,500 for a new roof. I didn't ask for it, but there it was. Do I keep it? Is there a tendency to say, well, you know, that's what the insurance company bought on for. This roof was damaged by hail. But do I need it? Do I deserve it? Can I use it for repairing the roof? I'll never repair that roof. You ever try to give money back to an insurance company? It doesn't compute. They have no way of receiving money back like that. I'd like to talk about some solutions. A solution for a lot of relatively little ethical questions, you know, like should you you actually bring the cheat sheet into the exam room, are that you can ask, is the action I want to take honest? Yes or no? Is it fair? And how does it make me feel? I was interested to see Clancy refer to how does it make you feel. You know, you can make a lot of decisions at times. You can fight or give up on every lawsuit that you're hit with as a company president, and it sure as hell makes you feel different depending on which choice you take. That's one form. There's another form that's sort of a proactive type of solution. Another one, which is a negative type of solution. If I make a decision and the worst possible condition occurs, and your mother finds out about it, or the news media finds out about it, in what position do you want to be at that time? Sort of try to predict the future and decide, you know, in which seat do you want to sit when it comes down. I went out to look at a building one time that had collapsed, all except one wall. This was a home, 2 stories, masonry, narrow, built a number of years ago on a 25-foot wide lot. The owner wanted to have a basement. And so he went downstairs and started digging the basement out. And he shaved the soil vertically down alongside the existing foundations, another 4 feet on down into the ground. And these walls started sloughing in. Down she came, well, except this one. I went out, asked by the insurance company to go out and look at it. And this wall was about to come down. And next door was a wide lawn area. If the wall fell that direction, it wouldn't reach the house next door, but there are kids in the area, the whole shooting match. So I went over to the owner next door, and I said, this wall can fall down any time. May I recommend to the owner that he brace that wall with braces that go back into your yard so it kicks the other direction if it falls? And the guy said, no. And I said, well, there's no way to brace it from the opposite side. If it does come down, it might kill some children. His answer was, to hell with the children. There's a fence. They're not supposed to be in my yard. I keep them out of my yard. So I then called the owner, and I said, this building can come down anytime. This wall can fall, and it can hurt somebody. And he said, well, I'll take a look at it on Saturday. This is Tuesday. What do you do? Well, in that condition, if you say, if worst came to worst and the news media found out about it, what position should I be in? If children were actually killed, and I, as a knowledgeable engineer, had not done everything in my power to keep those kids from getting killed, I would be hung out to dry. Well, I called the city. Oddly enough, the city had already come out and looked at it and went back to their desks. I called the city, and I used the words imminent danger of collapse, which tends to make city officials sort of belch out from behind their desks and go do something about it. And they immediately red-tagged the building, and the guy had it torn down by that evening. And then he said, well, now I want to rebuild this building. And the city said, oh, no. This building is built on a 25-foot lot. We have an ordinance now that says you can't build buildings on 25-foot lots. You could have repaired it, but you can't build a new one. He called up and offered to sue me. There is an interesting mathematical approach, which I have used, and it doesn't give me answer, but it sure as the dickens gets me into raising questions about it. If you have an ethical question, you can identify the players. Usually it would involve the public or some subset of the public. We're talking about for the greater good. One would be your client. Your client wants you to come up with a solution that is to his greater good. You are one of the major players. You are in business, and these ethical questions directly affect you. You can lose your job. If you're the president of the company, you can lose the company. But as a junior engineer, you can lose your job as well. You can identify the players, then you can identify the alternative actions you can take, the options. I can do this or I can do that. You know, on the wall, I could have called up the insurance company and said, you guys have an exposure. If this thing falls down, someone might get killed, and therefore you ought to do something about it. Hang up the phone, I would be safe, you know. That's one of my options. So you look at the various options you have. You have identified the advantages and disadvantages, make a list of them, then go through and put weight to each of the advantages and disadvantages. Weight may be dollars gained or dollars lost. Then you don't know whether or not a particular action is going to occur. You know, if you make this particular decision, you don't know for sure whether the disadvantages are going to occur or the advantages are going to accrue. And so you try to estimate what's the probability of this occurring. Well, if you take the weight times the probability, you get the expected value. If I might lose $100,000, but I only have a 50-50 chance of it going that way, then the expected value of that decision is $50,000. You add up all the advantages and the disadvantages, you add up all of these expected values, you come out with a value which represents the greater good. There are some people that are actually trying to quantify ethical decisions in this fashion, and it's kind of fun to do. What it really does is get you deeply involved in the consequences of your decisions. Who's going to get hurt or who's going to benefit, and allows you to recognize those players for whom they are. And so there are advantages. One of the things that I've noticed, I think, frankly, that probably 99% of the engineers think that they are ethical. Probably 99% of the engineers think that they are well above average in being ethical. What I have found is, in my own experience and in working with my employees, that I don't think most engineers ask the question, is it ethical? They make the decision based on their own personal philosophy. My mother spanked me when I lied, therefore I don't lie to my clients. But when it gets into tough decision-making in ethics, a lot of engineers never really ask the question. For example, if there is a public debate on pesticides, and I know as a specialist in pesticides, let's say that's what I am, that pesticides, if properly used, are safe. Do I, as a knowledgeable person in pesticides, can I ethically remain silent? There are many engineering decisions, like the Twin Forks Dam. If I know that the city will be better off with more water for the following 37 reasons, and they're all very good, sound engineering reasons, is it ethical for me to stay quiet? That's a question that engineers typically don't ask themselves, because engineers typically don't get involved in trying to answer those questions. Engineers are typically introverted problem solvers. They love to sit at their desk and do great things here, you know. They don't like to get up on soapbox and join the public conversation. Yet they are oftentimes knowledgeable in just what the conversation is all about. They don't ask the question, is it ethical to remain silent? Some of the considerations that come up, one of the dominant considerations is personal bias. If my daughter were killed by a drunk driver, I would probably hate drunk drivers. I would have an unreasoning hatred for them. On the other hand, if I, through my drinking, had killed somebody else's daughter, my concern for drunk drivers would be a deep concern for their health, but not a hatred against them. And all I've changed is bias. Bias is really and truly with us. Most people think they're not biased. Well, you can be biased towards being honest. You can be biased towards doing a good job on an exam, or be biased towards, mathematics. Bias isn't necessarily bad. But we are very definitely biased to save our own skins. There was a foxhole, two guys in the foxhole. One of them was digging a radial trench outward, saying, if a shell comes into this foxhole, I'm going to dive up that trench. He was biased into thinking he was safer that way. The other guy laughed at him and says, damn shell hits us, it's going to go right up that trench. He was biased the other way. And then one day a shell came in close. This fellow leaped for his trench and lit on top of the unbeliever who, when it really got down to his own hide, was very biased in favor of saving his own hide. What I would like to leave with you is that we need to recognize the tremendous cacophony of ethical questions that are flowing over our heads every day. We need to ask the ethical questions, or ask the question, is this ethical to do that? And you'll find that if you open your eyes and become insightful, that you'll find that there is a heck of a lot more about our lives that are questions in ethics. We need to be insightful. We need to learn to recognize them. Once we do recognize them, then we can ask the questions, is it honest, is it fair, how does it make me feel? We can go into the solutions of them once we recognize them. But certainly we need to go beyond where we were as children. Go beyond our normal reaction to situations. It's great that we're exploring ethics here today, and all of you are no longer children, so you've gotten beyond the stage of that. But become more insightful. Ask these questions, and look beyond yourself. Learn to recognize your own bias in their solutions. Thank you.
You defined ethics for yourself by saying that it's what's for the greater good.
Yes.
And my question will equip those of us in the audience to discover how useful that is as a definition of ethics. And my question for you is, how do you answer the questions that Clancy posed? And your answer should be one or two. First choice or second choice?
My tendency was to answer it pretty much generally, number one, recognizing the fact that, boy, that's not the real world. In the real world, for example, I work with insurance companies all the time. They have to decide whether to pay up or settle. And they call me up on a case where they've got a $3,000 claim, and I tell them it's going to cost $4,000 to tell them whether they should settle or not. They go ahead and settle. They don't like it. They may be totally right. But there's a real world also. And my tendency was to try to stay academically pure, but I know that that's not the real world in most cases.
Well, I think I recognize one common theme. I would like, if there are no questions to that, again, to come back to this question of the utilitarian calculus. But let me start with that. If we take, for example, the greater good as our rule of thumb, let's take an example of a conflict. For instance, something everybody knows about. For instance, the Boulder Path. There's a bicycle path that goes up along Boulder Creek, which has been closed down because it needs to be expanded in order to be safe, and therefore there's a great big gate gone up. And the reason it can't be expanded is that there's a number of private properties there. Now, you could argue, on the one hand, that there are thousands and thousands of bicyclists and nature lovers who are prevented from this by the presence of a couple of nasty owners who hold on to their property. So the calculus would work towards, opening the path, and you might say that the numbers would work out that way. On the other hand, you might say that the upholding of the principle of property interests a great many more people than a couple of bicyclists. How would you respond to that?
One of the fundamental problems is that when you make decisions like, in the case of the bicycle path, can you condemn the person's property or take the person's property and make a bicycle path because it is for the greater good, requires you to set up an authority to make those decisions. And I haven't found one that I would care to give that power to yet. The authority that's available in the United States is the common law, the freedoms that we have. And so, in fact, if someone wants to take the property for the bicycle path, they would technically have to go to court and prove it before a jury of our peers. I wish there were someone besides housewives and kids home from college on summer on the juries, because they're not really a cross-section of our peers. But we do have the system of justice that has developed over a number of years to fall back on in cases like this, and I'm very glad that that property rights are one of the things that can be upheld.
Thanasi, you said if you have too many ones. I wasn't quite sure what you meant by too many ones, but the implication seemed to be there's a sort of a level of one answer in which you won't be faced with these questions anymore because you won't be in business anymore.
Well, answering number
but
one.
on the other hand, if you went it the other way, if everybody took the one answers, if you could get everybody to do it, before long, a lot of these problems would disappear.
I'd appreciate if you'd go first. One of the most drastic cases in our company involved asbestos. We were sued by 24 individuals in California years ago. After 6 years and $500,000 in defense costs, the case was dropped by all 24. None of them knew what we made. None of them knew who we were, where we were, how they got our name, I don't know. They listed, 37 products that had damaged their health. We didn't make any of them, supply any of them, represent it, and did no business in California. And if another 100 cases had come in, I wouldn't be sitting here and we wouldn't be having these lectures. So our system is fraught with problems. You have to defend yourself in a major case like that. Settling was settling 24 when there's another million cases floating around doesn't do you much good.
I agree with that.
So you go first. I don't know the answers.
Well, there's a chairman of a major aerospace company that manages a federal facility, very big facility. Their arrangement with the federal government is they charge 8.5% of the operational costs as profit. The operational costs are a straight pass-through to the federal government. The employees in this organization largely are unionized. The employees said that if we don't get a 23% increase in our compensation, we're going on strike. And you're not going to fight us, because that 23% is just paid by the American taxpayer. His answer was, quite the contrary. You're going on strike. We're going to operate this plant with the supervisors, and we will have no unionized personnel in it. Because while I can pass that on to the American taxpayer, I think it's unethical to do it. They are operating that plant today with the supervisors. It's costing them half as much as it did before to operate the plant, and they have the same productivity.
Larger companies should and can lead the fight to straighten the system out. One reason is they're straightening it out with stockholders' money, not their own, usually. And the stockholders are a diverse group, and the risk and cost of doing that is spread out. If you're a small privately held company, you can only fight so many battles.
You even raised the ethical question there. Is it fair to their stockholders to do that?
That is a heck of a good question.
Stockholders are also taxpayers, so it's hard to judge.
I'd like to move the discussion into the realm of regulatory agencies and government interaction with the ethical decisions. Much of political science, or perhaps I should say political engineering, is devoted to trying to build structures which will somehow make the answers come out number one on a regular basis. In how far can this be successful? In how far should it be done? Are there any comments on this from either of our guests?
My experience with regulatory agencies has been bad, and just plain bad. They have their own axes to grind, their own departments to build, their own children to feed, and they are not attacking, or many of them are not attacking the problems, I think, ethically.
Is this an endemic problem of the regulatory answer to the ethical question, or is it simply a property of the agencies that have been constructed?
I feel that many agencies are working under the guise of doing something for the greater good. For example, the state of Colorado has a public health department with health laboratories. For some reason or other, there seems to be the philosophy that a private laboratory is somehow dishonest, and therefore a public laboratory is a necessity for the greater good. And so I see the State Highway Department designing highways, engineers and drafting boards, doing work that could be done in the private sector. I see a number of different kinds of state functions, like the management of a municipal facility, like the county courthouse. If done through private contracting, can probably be done much more effectively and at lower cost than to have it done through the public sector. There is a distinctly different work ethic. I'm getting myself in trouble too. I find when I hire people who have worked in government, they tend to stand around and drink coffee.
Don't do it.
Because that's what they're used to. That's what they think is part of their job. Their job is 8 to 5. They get a 15-minute break in the morning and in the afternoon. They do their work. They write regulations that the general public has to conform with. And they are doing it for the greater good. And I think that the philosophy of allowing the governments, plural, to be in competition with private practice on many, many fronts is an incorrect philosophy.
Being an employee of the state of Colorado, I suppose I need to be careful about my response.
Let me go back to Professor Jordan's question on the regulatory agencies. I think we all know now in retrospect, I honestly believe that if more engineers had been involved, we would know in prospect that it was not the greater good to create a whole national program to remove asbestos. It was not in the greater good in the sense that it no doubt increased health risks rather than decreased health risks, not even counting the cost of the removal itself, which turns out to be a very profitable industry if you're not in it. How do we change the political system so that these decisions are made more wisely?
How do you remove OSHA from office? I wouldn't know how to even start, but they, on the subject of asbestos, they were absolutely ridiculous and are even today taking the position that any asbestos, 1/10 of 1/10 of 1/10 of a fiber per cc hasn't been proved safe, therefore it should be removed from the world. The tests that we were to use in our factory, you took a sample by breathing through a gas mask of some kind, and then looked in a microscope to count the asbestos fibers you would see there after an 8-hour period. Every fiber, no matter what fiber you saw of a certain size, was to be counted as asbestos. It could have been horse manure, cotton, whatever you have, but everything was asbestos. If I did the test and Dick did the test on the same day, counting or looking through the same microscope, our human error would be plus or minus 30%. These are just absolutely ridiculous things, but they shut down the entire industry with their power.
That's because in the government structure is operated by attorneys. How many, and that's not their fault.
Who reallocate assets.
That's not their fault. That there are more engineers out there is our fault.
Let me come
There are more
to
engineers running for elective office isn't the attorney's fault. That's the
We
engineer's
should
fault.
equalize the number of attorneys that they have per capita in Japan and then move downward from there.
let me come to their defense, though. Not because I work with attorneys and send them bills, but attorneys are a product of our system, not the cause of the system. When people want to sue, when I get mad at Clancy and say, my God, I'm going to sue, one attorney's got a job, and then pretty soon 2 attorneys have a job. It's the system that provides the opportunity, and then any of us will tend to move into an opportunity. It's human nature. And so, to me, as long as you have the whole government run by the people, as long as you have politicians who are interested in getting votes, as long as you have news media interested in sensationalism, and as long as the politicians make decisions on asbestos because the news media drives them to it, I think you have a system that is run by lack of knowledge, not by knowledge. And I would much prefer to see the knowledgeable people, such as engineers, become more vocal. become much more a part of the conversation nationally.
Precisely my point, but it's our responsibility.
Yes.
And to get involved in politics somehow, if you dare.
Well, sure, yes, go ahead.
There's the problem of that a number of the political decisions are not engineering-based. You can, in fact, produce facts, and the facts are that large amounts of asbestos have been shown to be dangerous. No one has ever shown danger from quantities below a certain limit, nor has it ever been shown that these quantities are perfectly safe. Both statements are true. Now, there are two political answers to that, which are not engineering answers. One political answer is we will not use anything that has not been shown to be 100% safe, like, for instance, the street system. Or the political answer is we will use things that have not been clearly shown to be unsafe. That is not an engineering decision. That is clearly a political decision. Now, the engineer can supply quantification of the consequences of that decision, but the decision itself is not engineering.
I would like to add to that there is something about the pattern of rewards that has to do with the personnel that is chosen for different fields of life. That when one complains about the inefficiency of government, when one complains about the personnel that happens to represent us, when one complains about the masses of lawyers, one really has to see that the efficiency of government is largely crippled by the poor prestige and lack of material attractions that civil servants are offered. It is, I think, a traditional thing in the United States, which was understandably moved towards exploiting its vast resources in moving people of talent into business and indeed into engineering. And so that whereas in countries that were constituted as states earlier, where the state came before the party system, where the state came before the vast possibilities of technical exploitation and business expansion, where the prestige was with working for the state, you have the development of first-rate civil services, so that when a French bank wants a first-rate man, it goes to the Ministry of Finance to get him. So that it is really a whole systemic link that one has to try to effect in such a way as to obtain efficient, honest, and responsible government. I don't think that it is automatically a matter of course that anything that goes into the public hand is eo ipso doomed. It has to do with the neglect of the public hand. That is to say, the public hand having been neglected, it seems to me.
Seems to me that one of the fundamental things in ethics is the individual. I have choice. The other day I was in a hotel and there was a huge bookshelf with about 10 books on it, all of them dust covered. I was killing some time, so I picked one of them up, and it was a book on Herman Melville. Interesting book. I didn't have time to read it. So I took it up to my room. And all I had to do was put it in my suitcase. The next morning I went back and I put it on the shelf because I had choice. And if we can make it individual, if we can teach it in our schools, K through 12 as well as in college, if we can encourage people to decide to be honest, that is a fundamental change that is a grassroots kind of change that is definitely in the right direction. I happen to be a guy that is absurdly honest. My mother one time said she didn't like people that were not honest because I had turned a card over in a card game. And it destroyed me. So I have always been absurdly honest. And you get some marvelous fun being honest. I mean, it's great to call a waitress over and tell her that she made a mistake in my favor, and I should pay more than that, because it just blows their minds away. It's great fun being honest. And we need to have systems in our educational system, in our parental counseling, which emphasizes the joy of being honest. And a lot of these ethical questions will begin to dissolve.
Yeah, I think that our educational system is a failure in this area, and that again is a reason for the humanities program in engineering. K through 12 and on into college, how many people get a chance to even discuss honesty or other subjects of this nature? And it's far too few, and that needs to be corrected, but I don't see that happening as rapidly as I would like. That's the advantage of those of you that happen to participate in our program. You are our hope into the next century, because our efforts will be multiplied and you can carry the torch forward. It's a
Well,
plug.
it is a plug, and it is not only appreciated, but certainly I couldn't agree with you more. But let me say that very much as I appreciate what both of you gentlemen say about the importance of telling people, of discussing these questions, I thought I heard a common tenor from both of you that what really matters is conduct, that it is conduct and example that is much more important. I mean, it is really do as I do, not do as I say. I think that one of the themes that came across is that maxims, no matter how fine and no matter how grandly proclaimed, is not where ethics is. Ethics is in how you behave. And I think that is something that needs to be understood. And that leads me back, if I may say so, to our program, which tries to allow the books to speak for themselves and the students to think for themselves, and does not involve making a list of maxims, telling them, learn them, and then you will be good. Well, on this note then, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.